Hi chess friends, this is King's Executor bringing a game to you from Shredder against Rybka, and it's played in the 10th International Computer Tournament in 2010, and it's nice to see how Rybka employed the Dutch Leningrad formation with g6 and bishop g7. c4 by white, castles, knight c3, d6 to prepare e5 with the queen on e8, castles, queen e8, b3. Okay, let's step back here. This is why it's main line against the Dutch. You have the bishop here, and you want to push the pawns on the queen side or in the center and cramp black, and you wanna pressurize him on the queen side with these pawns here. So this is white's plan, and black wants to play in the center and on the king's flank. The queen here looks on the queen onto the queen side and onto the king's side, and you have two plans for the flanks and one plan for the center. You want to prepare e5 if possible, and you can play h6 and g5 and put the queen on g6 or h5, and the pawns would be on the green squares, and you can try to attack the white king in the King's Indian fashion. You can also play c6 and b5, but this b5 push must be prepared. This knight comes, sorry, I have a bad mouse, comes here, watching over b5. This rook comes here, and then you push b5 in the end, and then you can play on the queen side. b3 was played, and this is a little bit dangerous. This bishop doesn't necessarily have to go to b2, but it also can come to a3, and this can pin this pawn if you push your e5 pawn, and there are captures, and the bishop is sitting on a3, and you cannot recapture here because of the pin to the rook. So you have to watch out for this, and if the pawn push isn't favorable in such positions, then you try to switch plans, and you wouldn't attack the king's side if e5 isn't played. So in this position, waiting with c6, which is a standard move, I recommend blocking these squares for these important pieces. Switching plans, playing on the queen side with reasonable waiting moves, preparational moves, is a good idea. Bishop a3 was played, so e5 isn't possible now. Let's just look at it. Takes, and now you cannot recapture due to this pin, and a move like knight g4 doesn't work. Okay, so knight a6 was played, the standard developing a maneuver. Your center is not established yet, you don't have much space, so you don't want your pieces all touching on each other's toes here. The bishop isn't watching about this e6 square anymore, so this knight can jump in, and this is why you play your knight out to a6 rather than to d7 in this stage of the game. Queen d3 looks funny, because if the bishop wouldn't watch about wouldn't watch over b4, then you could harass the queen, but not in this position, of course. Rook b8. Now you see the plan of preparing b5, of course, due to this strong bishop. And the rook not only helps pushing this pawn, but it gets out of the way of this long diagonal. After the pawns are exchanged, the rook would be hanging. So rook b8 is a multi-purpose move. e4 by white, trying to open up the e-file. Let's just look at it. This pawn was taken by Rybka. Knight took, and bishop came to f5. This is the drawback of pushing this pawn. The pawn is replaced by this bishop, covering the light squares on the king side. But white is hoping to nail down this backward pawn and try to take advantage of it. And this pawn could become weak if you don't play perfectly. Knight takes f6 check, bishop takes, queen d2, queen d7, rook fe1, knight c7, again covering these squares, watching over the idea of b5, and yeah, you will see the knight's job later on there. Rook ac1, bishop h3. Well, white seems to have more space in the center, so black wants to exchange pieces here, so pawn breaks don't work well here. Okay. Bishop b4. Bishop took g2, king takes, rook f7. Knight g2. This was taken. And now it looks as if this bishop and this queen could be dangerous to the black king. Rook b f8, rook c2, and now e5. Funny. A moment ago I told you e5 is not possible with this bishop here pinning this pawn. But this is of course Rybka playing, having every tactical opportunities under control. This pawn was taken and knight e6 was the intermezzo here. The queen is attacked and it has to go somewhere, and the best square is e3, because of course f2 is attacked or under pressure. Rook f3, queen e4, and knight g5. Looks dangerous. e6. Now both queens are attacked. Check, takes, check, and now the king cannot take the rook, because then black would take the queen with check. So king h1 to have the opponent's queen attacked. Queen e7, queen e3, rook f3, queen e2, rook f8, bishop c3, knight f3, rook d1, and now everything really hinges about these pawns, which of them are strong or weak. Knight g5 and c5. Queen takes this pawn, takes, and king f7. Okay, we reached an endgame here, and it looks as if white should be better with this bishop and the two pawn frontiers, but this pawn is on a dark square and takes away flexibility of the bishop, and the pawn is a little bit weak, I guess. Rook e1, rook d8, bishop e5, king e8, rook f1, rook d7, king g2, rook f7. Now black wants to exchange rooks, rook e1 and c5, taking away dark squares from the bishop, and the bishop is not able to attack the pawns here because it's blocked by its own pawn. h4, king d7, g4, knight d8, rook h1. Really analyzing, commentating engine games is sometimes difficult, because sometimes the engines play moves you don't see a point in, really, at least not a clear point. Sometimes the engines play moves which are not necessarily contributing to any plan, but it's not losing, and this is why some funny moves are played. Yeah, this is a phenomenon in engine games. Knight b4. Now it seems as if white's pawns are weak. Rook c1, b6, rook e1, a6. Well, a6 is designed to push b5 if a4 comes, and then black has a passed pawn on the queen side. Rook e2, knight d5. Well, Shredder doesn't see a way through here. Of course, he's cut off with his king, and he has to exchange rooks if he wants to, and this takes time. Coming here, and after exchanging, the king falls back, and if you want to exchange here, then you have to move the rook twice, so it takes time. Rook f6, trying to exchange rooks on e6, king h2, and rook f3, rook e5, rook d3, rook e2, b5. Well, Rybka starts to get a winning endgame here. Bishop e5, c4. And now you see it's, I think, all because of this pawn. If the pawn were here instead of here, then I think it would be at least a draw, or even better for white. Takes, takes. King g1, c3. King f2, rook h3. Attacking the pawn. And the bishop thought it blocked the rook out, but rook h1, rook e1, and now after exchanging, knight e3, bishop f2, knight takes g4. Now the pawns are dropping. Bishop d4, knight h2, and knight h2 is simply threatening to check and gain this pawn here. Sorry. King d1, knight f3 anyway, bishop f2, not letting black get two passed pawns which are connected here, and now the king can take this lonely pawn here. King c2, g5, h takes, knight takes, king d3. Well, if the king took here, then of course this would be winning easily. King d3, king d5. Bishop e3, knight e4, bishop h6, a5, bishop f8, h5. Well, in this position, white is under Zugzwang almost, and this pawn or this pawn will proceed, and you have to move this pawn, this king, or this bishop. And if you move the bishop, this pawn comes forward. If you move the king, this king comes forward. And if you move the pawn here, then you have probably knight c5 check, winning this pawn. Let's look at it. Check, check. Well, knight b6, covering these squares, and the bishop cannot hold both pawns here. Okay, let's go back to this position. This is why the engine sees that and he doesn't try it, so he plays bishop f8. It's the same for him. h5, bishop e7, and king e5. Well, the king has to watch over this pawn, and the king here is coming to the king's side this way. Let's look at it. In this position, Shredder resigned or lost due to the positional factors. If bishop h4, king f4, and if I don't know, let's say bishop e1, then knight g3 already blocks the bishop out, and if takes, h4, well, what to play here? h3, let's say king here, king there, and it's all over. So this is a nice one game by Rybka, and let's just go back to this position here. This is really the formation you want to start off with the Leningrad Dutch. I hope you enjoyed the game and you saw that it is a sound and nice opening for black, or else Rybka wouldn't have played it, or let's say even if it was programmed to play this particular opening, then you see that white had nothing to refute this opening. An opening which Viktor Korchnoi couldn't play really. He lost terribly with this opening. But I think it is connected with the point that, just let me get rid of this arrow, that he didn't play c6, making his life easier. And he played e5 without c6, and this allows to take advantage of central squares, or even here, if the knight comes here. You see, there's so much to watch over if you don't play c6, and it's a really helpful and frustrating move for the opponent, and helpful for you. So employ c6, and this is a very good move. Please subscribe, comment, and like if you did. Bye.